All right, it's Trent Klarenbach with the Klarenbach Special Crops Report, and today I have David Nobbs with Harvest Grain and Bornhorst Seeds with me today, and we're going to talk about Dave's outlook on the special crops. And we're going to do a series of these conversations. The first one today is going to be with green lentils. We'll talk large greens, we'll talk small greens, and also French greens.
Greens, yep.
In a couple of weeks, we'll follow up with canary seed, and a few weeks after that, we'll discuss peas and red lentils. We're going to push those pea and red lentil analysis back as we wait for Australia, more data and information to come out of Australia.
Yeah, I think it's a little early to talk about some of these things. The Chinese tariffs really affect the outlook of peas because they're 50% of the market for a green and yellow pea and 100% of the maple market. So hopefully a little time will give us some clarity on what's going to happen there. And then, of course, Australian harvest, we should see a little more concrete data as we get further out. A month from now might be a little better time to discuss that as well, because that's key to that market.
Yeah, well, you know the markets, the fundamental side better than I do, and the timings and that, so that's great news. I'll include a bit of technical here at the end of it, very high level. Dave, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with your...
Well, so over the last 20 years or so, I've spent quite a bit of time in the summer driving. And, this started with the frost in 2004. We had a major frost. It was actually the night of the Etonia Bolorama. I could actually remember standing in the rink at the Bolorama.
Was that when the bulls got out and chased them?
No, that was a different year where they're chasing people around. That was a fun one. But this was... It just got super cold in the rink there during that event, and there was a major frost on the east side of the province, which really impacted the canary seed market. Good and bad, actually. It shot straight up, and we'll talk more about that in the next episode. But since that time, after that event, I drove down to Sedley, and I went out in the field with Maury Capel and looked at his canary seed, and I was driving around that area, and I couldn't believe the amount of canary seed that was there. And I thought that, I have to spend more time out on the road trying to understand what crops are out there. And you see a lot of people, traders will come out to the prairies, and they'll drive around and they'll say, well, lentils are up, lentils are down, canary's up, looks like a good crop, etc. And the reality is you can't see a 10% or 15% shift in acreage just by driving around. You just can't visually remember what you seen a year ago. So what I started to do was do field counts where I count about 2,000 fields, 2,700 fields across some very specific highways. And I try and put some hard data into what I see. The second line of information that's also critical is the Saskatchewan crop insurance values. Looking at what those are very hard numbers. The third most important numbers are really Stat Canada, right? I mean, the Stat Canada numbers are, obviously manipulated by the grower, and so the data coming out of Stat Canada is getting worse and worse, and they're also going to more modeling and less surveying. So they're trying to kind of estimate what the farmer did. And I have felt since November that the grower that grows a green lentil or a red lentil, their number one decision was how many acres on their farm. Their number one decision on their farm was how many acres of green lentils should I put in this year. And we had some big red lentil growers shift into small greens. Small greens, you could grow a lot of acres. If you got 2,000 bushels of seed, you can grow 2,000 acres. So it's very easy to switch into an Eston, and it appears Eston had the most of the advancement. So we'll talk about each lentil variety individually, but that's how I've kind of come to I spend a week or 10 days driving the prairies in later July, and you got to be late enough so you can tell the difference between the crops while you're driving down the highway at 100K or 110, and so it has to be a little bit later, and we can't do this study in May or whatever, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's what I've been up to for the last 20 years. I've really gotten good at documenting the data here in the last 4 or 5 years. In the first years I had sheets of paper and I stacked them in a file, and I don't know where the file went. And it's just so, but I look for year-over-year changes. So this year in lentils, Stats Canada states that lentil acreage is up 4% over last year. My field counts show about 10% over last year. And I do believe Stat Canada is off a bit. That's not the most critical thing, though. I mean, it tells us that, yep, Stat Canada is kind of on track. But it's more about what is the split between reds, greens, and small greens, reds, large, and small greens. That's really the key information, because we had a lot of acres gravitate away. So,
Okay.
So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so that takes it's harder. It's hard, more accurate information than relying on just quick drive-bys, a small percentage of the province, and like you say, identifying which is the crop.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to do with the trained eye, let alone the untrained eye, and it has to happen at a certain point in the growing season. So
yeah, I was talking to a farmer in Etonia, that you and I both know very well, and a couple years ago, and he said, "Oh, lentil acres are down," and I said, "Well, did you know on the highway from Leader to Kindersley, lentil acres are up 30%?" And he's like, "No, but you can't see those things, and you can't just, we're not a computer. We can't remember exactly how many acres were there the year before.
Yeah.
So if you start to put some hard information down or hard data, you can start getting a little better understanding." Now, this is such a very small sample of the province, but it's not designed to give you a perfect number, but it's just designed to give you a better feel of the trend.
Right. Well, and we let our emotional bias get in the way too. If we're a large or lentil grower,
Yeah.
we don't want to see
100%.
more acres. We want to see less.
Yeah.
And that fits our narrative. So.
Yeah, and I'm a lentil grower myself. I mean, I've got French green in, I've got large green acreage in, and so I want to understand this as well for my own reasons, right? So.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So I guess where do you want to start next year, Dave?
Large greens, I think probably makes the most sense to start. So.
Okay.
Of course, when I'm driving, I can't tell the difference between a large green and a small green or a red. And in the fall we had a 30-cent red lentil, 32-cent red lentil in the old crop, and we had a 50, even 60-cent number 2 large green, right? So that was the first reason why you would say people would stick with large greens or even try and expand the acreage. Stat Canada said we were up, I think, 30% on large green acreage over the year before. I'm not going to argue with that number. I'm just using that number.
So at 30% in 2025?
In 2025, over 24 acreage.
Okay.
So in 24 we had about 1.1 million acres of green lentils. And 30% increase is about 1.44 million acres of green lentils, large green.
Significant increase.
Yeah, so 30% is significant, but you had that, and they said reds are down 16%. So that's where the acreage, some of the acreage came from.
Well, how does that acreage 1,400 or 1.4, how does that compare with other previous high years?
Well, I mean, if you go back to the drought year of 21, we had 760,000 acres. So that's the other key issue is since 2021, our green lentil acreage in general has doubled. And in the case of small greens, it's tripled since 2021.
And it's not a drought year.
Right, it's not a drought year. There are some areas that are impacted. If you were in those areas, that's unfortunate, and that area was, more Burstall down to Maple Creek and Limerick to Assiniboia. Unfortunate, but there's a lot of area to this province, and there's a lot of pretty decent crops. And some of those crops, even south of Etonia, we thought in early June weren't going to do a lot, and now they look like 30 bushel crops. So the lentils will really, really respond to later moisture, whereas a pea won't so much.
So we got acres are up.
Yeah, so we've got about 1.4 million acres, 1.445 million acres of large green. 21 we had 770,000 acres of large green. If we go back to 24, we had about 1.1 million acres, and we had much more extensive drought areas, and I don't remember the exact yield for last year, but we produced in the neighborhood of a little over 500,000 tons of large greens.
Okay.
So the key though was we had 200,000 tons or 175 roughly of product going into India. And this all kind of reminds me a lot of 16, where we had a super high red lentil market, and then India, Australia, Turkey, the US all ramped up their pulse acreage. And something similar happened with pigeon peas in Africa, and now pigeon peas are coming out of Africa, going into India at anywhere from $550 to $650 a ton. So basically the Indian market's closed. There is a 10% tariff there, but there is simply not shipping going to happen this year into India unless we get cheap. And then they will buy product, and so they will buy a lower quality number 3 or an extra 3. So if some of these rains affect some of the crop, we'll have product that will fit into that market, but it's got to be at a 20-25 cent value, right?
Wow.
So today we're at about 33 cents. 33 cents isn't going to trade into India. So instead of 550,000 ton last year, we have about 800,000 ton of large green this year. And our traditional markets are 3, 4, 500,000 tons, right? So we've got a very significant oversupply situation.
Is there any chance that India situation will change?
And so the India right now is planting their Kharif crop, so that's the pigeon pea crop. They produce a large domestic pigeon pea crop, and our green lentils go into that market and substitute for a pigeon pea.
Okay.
Right. So if there's, if that crop had a problem, then yes, but that crop, the monsoon to date is normal, and expected to be normal for the 4-month monsoon ending in, I think, the end of September. And so the expectation is the pigeon pea crop is good there. So they'll use their own or import. And normally that demand would show up in November, December from India for our large greens if that crop was short. But those traders aren't anticipating it short, and they're not buying. And they will anticipate and buy if they think there's a problem, and they're not buying it.
Interesting.
Right. So that's our key issue with this crop. And 2005, if I can go back to there for a second, we had a situation where in 04 we had the frost, lentil prices went up, and then in 05 we seeded a ton of green lentils in Canada. And that's when we went down to 8 cents for a number 2 laird.
What year was that again?
It was 2005.
20 years ago.
Yeah. Coming off of that 04 frost that I talked about, that early.
Yeah.
It was an earlier August, I think the 12th or the 14th. Don't remember the date. But it was an early August frost, and it really smashed our quality, right? And, we've got a situation again where we're probably simply going to produce more lentils than we can market, right?
What are the chances of it dropping below 20 cents, do you think? Down to 8 cents, 10 cents, say?
Well, in November, we were looking at generally a 48 cent 2025 new crop price. like an act of God, do crop production contracts were in that neighborhood. And, I felt that they were high. Some people took advantage of them. Some people didn't. But I thought, well, maybe we can get towards 30 cents. And now I wonder if we can't go below 30 cents now on Laird's for a number 2 is what I mean.
Number 2.
And I will get into Eston's in a second. That's a completely different market, but I think that's just the reality. And in 05, after Sask Pulse Growers did the red lentil marketing study, the green lentil marketing study. We talked about a green lentil co-op of all things for marketing.
Really?
There was some talk about that, and which is the last thing we wanted. And it never, obviously, nobody supported that. But there was, a lot of people said, couldn't we see this coming, right? And the issue with the green market was we've had this potential problem for a couple of years, but we've continued to have these droughts, right? And so that's what's kept us on our toes. And this crop has turned around dramatically since the 1st of June. And now we're faced with an oversupply, right?
There seems to be an oversupply of most agriculture commodities in the world right now.
Yeah.
As far as the grains and the pulses. It's interesting to me how that all happens at similar times, or often it does.
Right, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a rising tide thing that seems to just impact everything, or falling tide in this case.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So do you want to touch a little bit what you're seeing technically?
Yeah, so what I'll do is, this chart you're seeing right now it's my Klarenbach price index for large green lentils for Saskatchewan delivered to the plant. You can see we had our highs back, I think a high of 81 on the price index back a year ago, maybe it was. And it's just been a steady drop down. So what they call a 3-wave correction. I'm not sure how lower it's going to go. It's at some previous supply back here in the 2008, 2011, but I'm not sure that's enough. It looks like a head and shoulders pattern forming there on this weekly chart too, so you can kind of take a look at that. And what you do with the head and shoulders measured move, it takes us down to, what do we come up with? 12 cents, I came. So, yeah, that takes us back down in almost a historic trading level from the last 30 years, really. So it's not unheard of to be at those levels. In fact, it might have been, what was it down in 2018, 2019? What did it get down to? Do you remember?
Well, I mean, this is, I don't know your exact years here, but this is coming off of that 16 high where we've seen red lentils, I think, as high as 60 cents.
Yeah.
Or in 15, and then in 16, we had a lot of quality problems. We had 25 inches of rain that year, and we produced about 50% of the crop was a number 2. So prices held up high at the start of that year, and then collapsed, and then we were down to 15 cents on red lentils in 2017. And that's not a decade ago. We were at 17 cents or 15 cents for a number 2 red.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's we're not talking about reds, and I don't see reds going to 15 cents, and I struggle to see a large green go to 15. I think India would start buying it and provide a floor long before we broke through 20. I think.
Interesting.
But there'll be a technical fundamental fight there, and I guess we'll see which holds.
Yeah. Well, this level we're at, that 25 to 30 cent level, 33 cent level, seems to be an area of previous supply. So from a technical perspective, you expect the price to take some time before it works below that level, if it does at all. Could act as support, or it could just slow down the decline. So.
I believe a rough long-term average for large green lentils is 25 cents, right? That number just kind of comes to my mind, and we're seeing canary seed, a few years ago at 55 cents. Now we're at 25 cents today.
Yeah.
So this I guess is not a surprise that history is repeating itself.
Yeah, these commodities seem to end up
cycle.
going back to the previous levels, in my opinion. So, all right, yeah. So we looked at that. We should talk about. Are we done with the large grains?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we don't know the quality yet. We don't know our final yield. I'm using, I think, a fairly conservative number of 1,350 pounds. You know, I've heard some 40 bushel yields coming off. I've heard some 20 bushel yields coming off. Somewhere in the middle is the average. And there'll be some 10s, you know, in some of the really affected areas, or zeros that aren't combined, you know, due to drought. So, you know, we're going to have a number somewhere down there. I will reiterate, though, you know, the amount of moisture we've had, I don't think affected the large greens. I think it affected some earlier small greens in the south. I think that's where we're going to see some quality issues.
Okay.
You know, large greens are generally a little later, a little greener when we had these rains for the last couple of weeks. At least that's how my farm looks anyway today. But, you know, I stand to be corrected on that. But with such a tonnage compared to demand, I think there's enough product that the trade will be able to sort through that tonnage and probably not create, you know, a short demand covering. It's the short demand coverings that can really jump the price, and I just can't see how that's there. So I guess, you want to go on to Eston's then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Eston's, the Eston market, I spend quite a bit of time in the Eston market, and a lot of our canary seed buyers happen to also be big Eston lentil buyers, so we ship a lot of Estons into Mexico, also Peru is a big demand, whole Europe, and Morocco. Those are your 4 main markets in the world. And there's a lot of large green markets that don't buy any Estons. But some of the Eston markets buy some large green.
Why is that?
I don't know. Yeah, just what they've consumed. I mean, Peru buys about half Estons and half large green. Morocco is just about 100% Estons. Europe and different countries, some will buy Estons. You know, over the last few years, we've seen a lot of substitution even of Estons. With Eston price of 50 or 55 cents, there was buyers in Italy taking red lentils for canning instead of an Eston because they were 30 cents Canadian versus 50 cents. So, you know, there's always kind of this low-cost ration that every buyer is going to try to achieve, just like us buying fertilizer, trying to find the lowest cost way to manage your business, and they're doing the same thing with these. So, you know, we've seen French green lentils. Buyers are substituting Estons for canning, right? Because you can't really tell the difference once it's in a can.
All right. Yeah, interesting.
So yeah.
Wow.
So in the Eston market, you've got a really 150,000 tons kind of core demand, and then you've got maybe another 75,000 tons that go to other, you know, bits and pieces around the world. So call it a 200 to 250,000 ton market. Very few Estons go into India for pigeon pea replacement, and they're more focused on a large green. And so we don't have kind of India to take Estons, excess of Estons, and except for if Estons are worth less than a red lentil. If Estons are 5 cents less than a red lentil, you'll see India buy some Estons, and they will dye them or color them, blend them into their red lentil splits.
Oh, really?
If there's an advantage, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But we're not going to see that when Estons are you know, Estons are basically at the same value or a little higher than a red. We're not going to see that happen. But you know, I anticipate, you know, if we look at 2021, we had 300,000 acres roughly of Estons. You know, I think this year we probably have 700,000 acres of Estons. Stat Canada is saying 44% increase over last year, and I believe it. We have numerous growers that switched red lentil acreage entirely to Estons, and we have contracts with a lot of those growers. So
So the acres came at the expense of reds or?
Reds and you know, a 10% increase in overall acreage.
Okay.
So 10% on 400,000 acres last year, 4.2. So if we have a 10%, which I believe that's 400,000 extra acres, plus you have a 16% drop on your red acres. So it gives us, you know, in the neighborhood of 2 times what the market needs, right?
2 times what the market needs.
So if the market's 200 to 250,000, we're going to grow double that.
So either price is going to get rid of that, or sales won't happen.
Yeah, our growers will carry a lot over, I would guess.
Yeah.
And the one thing about, you hear a lot of people say you can't hold a green lentil more than a year. That's not true with an Eston, right? Or that's not true with a top number 2 large green. You can if you got a top color number 2 large green, you can hold that into the next marketing year.
So is oxidization. That was always the issue, right?
It is. So if you're at the bottom of a 2, then you're going to fall out of the 2 grade a year from now.
Oh, I see.
Right? But you hear people say, well, you can't hold them. And that's just not the case with the number 1 Eston. You know, in the last 2 or 3 years, we have hardly marketed any number 2 Estons. You know, and Eston really holds its grade well. But we will see number 2s. We'll probably see some extra 3 Estons this year. With some of the rain on some of the earlier seeded Estons, which are maturing earlier than the large green. So we will see some lower quality, and you know, that's okay. It's not okay when you're a farmer, but that's okay from a trade standpoint, because it will open up some markets. It'll open up some demand into places that we haven't been shipping into. And so, you know, maybe we ship more Estons, but I struggle with the idea that we can ship all the Estons that we're growing.
Okay, I'm going to hang up on the oxidization thing here. Something I always wondered is if there's a correlation between amount of oxidization and the size of the bin.
Oh, yeah, it could be. I've never really thought about that. I've heard people lining bins and putting Estons in almost a grain bag in the bin to reduce the air.
Really?
Now, I just heard rumblings about a grower from Estevan doing that years ago when he had big supply that he wanted to carry. But I don't know how accurate that is. Yeah, it seems like it. You know, and we also have to look at value per acre, right? If you have a 2,000 pound lentil crop and you've made some sales earlier and you make some sales later, you know, you could be easily at $600, $700, $800 an acre still.
So you might have to make some sales to make up for some other,
yeah,
regenerate cash flow and or make up for some negative.
Yeah, but the idea of waiting till the market comes back, if you think you're going to need to sell that product this fall, or sorry, this marketing year, I think it's going to be like some of the other years where we see the best prices are really off the field, right? You know, and that's my take home. I will be virtually 100% sold out by the time we're done combining lentils on my farm.
Well, it makes sense to me because what I've noticed is when the low prices are at harvest time off the combine are when the market's going in an uptrend. But in downtrends, the trend seems to be stronger than.
Right.
You know, if the trend is down in the price, then it's likely going down throughout the rest of the crop year.
Yeah, and until we hit some kind of impossibly cheap value that makes no sense, and everybody just kind of throws up their hands and says, "We'll wait," right?
Yeah.
But it's really hard as a farmer. I know this myself, and it's something that I have to really separate between my farm and my work. It's very hard to look at where prices were and think that they can go down lower, right?
Yeah. The anchoring bias, yeah.
Right, and I mean, and looking at a chart and understanding the cycles of the markets, you know, I do this on currency too, right? And you know, you really have to get your mind out of the idea that, you know, that these prices are low, and we were hearing people's talking about 40-cent Eston prices this winter that we were offering on Act to God contracts as being too cheap.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, 2024 was the only season we ever seen higher than that, right? So, you know, it's $24 a bushel at 40 cents, right? So you got to shoot the ducks when they fly by. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, we get stuck in these prices, and we start thinking we need it and expect it. And sometimes the best thing is to, the term is cut your losses short and make that first sale. Take the small loss, don't turn it into a big one.
Yeah.
And now the loss might not be a dollar value loss per acre, but it might just mean selling now at a higher price than a few months out, right? So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're selling in November, December, paying bills in Jan, Feb, I think that's a recipe for some pretty low values, right?
Yeah.
But
Well, the trend continues down,
Yeah.
sharply down. So, yeah.
trend is not your friend.
Trend is not your friend. No. No.
So yeah, I mean that's how we see the Eston market. You know, we'll ship more product at lower values, and you know, maybe we steal some market share from some other pulses around the world. But it's difficult to see all this stuff move this year.
So if producers in Canada have increased their acreages of green lentils, why wouldn't other regions of the world, as in Russia or Eastern Europe, Australia, high prices usually bring on demand or supply? Are you seeing, is that happening around the world too? Is there increased competition?
Oh yeah, so yeah, Russia's increased their green lentil acreage again this year. The issue with Russia though is there's a ruble. So they're when it looked like the war was going to end, the ruble really appreciated. So all of a sudden the grower had to take like 30% less rubles, and this is an issue in the pea market in China. So the grower's got to take a haircut on his price because the dollar is appreciated to get to a world USD price.
Their currency's appreciated.
Their currency appreciated because it went just right in the hole.
Yeah.
And they were selling grain and happy, and then all of a sudden they get a 30% adjustment in the ruble. And so there's some things like that happening. Kazakhstan's also growing some green lentils now. The Turkish green lentil crop, it's maybe a 50,000 ton crop, was poor. That was a positive. So Turkey might import a bit more. The Spanish green lentil crop was poor. So that'll help. But help by what? 10, 20,000 tons? Like this doesn't fix the imbalance that we have, right? Australia doesn't tend to grow Australia doesn't tend to grow a green lentil. They grow red lentils only, right? So,
okay. And why is that?
Yeah, good question. I don't know if they don't have the varieties. They've got like I think an 8 or 9 month growing season. It's a very different production on their reds than we have. We have a 3 month, basically 90-day.
So is it just too long to get 2 crops in, or?
Well, I don't think they grow 2 crops, but they seed in, I think, May, and they harvest in December, or April and December.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been to Australia, and to be honest, don't know a lot about their production practices.
Yeah.
But they don't grow greens. The U.S. green lentil acreage is up a lot too, and they grow richly primarily. I wish I could say I remembered the amount they're up. I think it's 25% over last year is their estimate of production.
25%.
Yeah.
So back in the day, I was aware of that PL 480 program.
Yeah.
Is that still a thing?
No, I mean I believe my understanding is that's part of the U.S. aid group that Musk crushed or canceled.
Yeah.
So that's a big impact for the American growers, because they were buying that product generally at high value and pushing it out into aid, and now that's kind of dried up. Now I'm not 100% sure exactly if that's completely dried up, but that's my understanding. So that is affecting those growers. Plus, they've got more production of green lentils. Now, there is parts of Montana that have really severe drought issues and also have some weathering issues from those rains that hit us. But their crops a couple weeks even more advanced, so they were in a very prime time to get damaged.
Oh, okay.
Right. So, and some of that will go into their own pet food markets as well. And pet food markets for the low quality threes can be really excellent, but we haven't seen much in the last 12 months of pet food demand out of Canada for the American pet food demand.
Oh, I
It's
see.
been very, very, very slow.
They're just meeting their own needs.
They're using their own product. At one point, the American pet food industry was importing chickpeas from Australia cheaper than they could buy chickpeas from Canada, right? So, sometimes our prices have gotten a bit out of whack.
So why can that be? Because they're obviously competing. I guess maybe the freight's more expensive to Europe, maybe, or is that why than Canada?
I'm not 100% sure how all the math worked, but
Because they're super competitive going into Asia, aren't they? Australia?
Australia would be, yeah, I mean, they don't grow peas for export, really.
Okay.
They grow a lot of Desi chickpeas for India,
Okay.
right? So I think the Desi demand was down, and Desi markets crashed here at one point in the last year or so. I mean, I don't follow chickpeas super close, but they're kind of in the peripheral of our conversations day to day.
Yeah.
And, so yeah. So what's your view from a technical standpoint on Estons?
Well, likely very similar to large greens here. So yeah, just take a look at that chart, and that's, where did that start going down? Obviously the first quarter of this year, or last quarter of last year. Just been a steady drop down. And there's really not much, there's maybe some support around that 25, 26 level, maybe down to 20, but what'd you say the price was?
I mean, we're at 30 today.
30, yeah.
It's not going to take a big amount of push from the grower to push us down. Some of my competitors are at 26 cents today.
Oh, yeah.
So it's funny you say that's an area of resistance.
Support. Yeah.
Or support.
Yeah, I might have said resistance, but support.
I've thought for a few months that we could get to 25 on Estons, but I just didn't have any vision of going lower than that value. But when I start to look at the numbers, it's hard to question that it doesn't push through that.
Well, and if you look at that chart I'm showing there, it looks like a head and shoulders pattern forming there. Left shoulder is more developed than the right, but I mean, if that's what we're dealing with, and we do a measured move from the top of the head to the break of the neckline, then we're getting down in that. Let's just do the quick math here. 25. We're looking at 15 cents, 10 to 15 cents a pound, potentially.
Yeah.
If this head and shoulders move meets its measured move price target.
Yeah, and it's really hard for me to envision these values, but that everybody, well, I guess we'll just see what happens, right? But
yeah.
But I still think sell today, not tomorrow, right now, and what happens in Canada's crop next year, I don't know, right? And I don't let any of that kind of influence what I think about marketing today. I try and market especially on my own farm. I try and market with what information I have that's in front of me.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed about you since the last 20 years is you're very good at making margin, taking a margin and be happy with that margin.
Right.
And I think you've applied that to your farm too, from what I can tell.
Yeah, it's hard not. I mean, I have to market grain every day, all day for a whole year, right? So I can't kind of fall in love with, the direction of the market or, the only way we make money is we bring grain in, we clean it, and we load it into a container and we ship it to a destination. That's how we make
It's
money.
volume.
Yeah.
Volume and margin.
Right. I mean, and so I mean, you'll have people say, well, if you held that, for 3 months, you could make 10 cents a pound. Well, if I ship it 5 times, I still make 10 cents a pound, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a different way of thinking, but I think there's a benefit to your farming operation.
definitely has been, yeah. Our marketing on our farm is better. But I'll say this, but in up markets, I tend to be more sold than I'd like, right? So and I think viewing downtrending markets is much easier than the spikes up, right? And markets tend to jump up because all of a sudden you don't have enough rainfall, or the demand comes in aggressively from somewhere like India. India has the ability to upend the markets. So if we know the Kharif crop looks pretty solid, the pigeon pea production, seeding seeding rate looks pretty solid, which it does, then there's probably not a problem coming in that pigeon pea market this year. Could there be a big problem 12 months from now? Yes. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
Right. And from my farm standpoint, it doesn't matter to me either. And
Right.
from my work standpoint, it doesn't matter either. Right. So, I mean, I'm always amazed by how people will hold grain and they have enough wealth to just sit on the product and wait for the market to come back to them. But I think it's some people have that ability and some don't. On our farm, we have to sell everything we grow every year, right?
Yeah.
And we don't have enough storage, to hold a lot of stuff. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's opportunity cost. There's a whole host
Right.
of reasons to sell. And I've talked about this before. The very first grain marketing course I took in Rosetown, the instructor really questioned why farmers hold their grain. Because he was talking about replacing that ownership with paper, which you can't do with green lentils, mind you. But, I mean, there's some opportunity cost there that people don't maybe always calculate or whatnot. So.
Yeah, well, if I grow a little canola this spring next year in 26, I'll have to take. You have to remind me to do that.
Oh, you're going to grow some canola?
I might.
Really? When's the last time you grew canola?
My dad grew some Westar in 1994-ish.
Really?
Yeah, Westar or what was the other variety? There was 2 back then, 2 varieties of canola, Westar and something else.
Oh, I didn't think you guys actually.
We had 80 acres one year. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was before the chickpea,
Yeah.
maple pea, lentil, coriander explosion.
And we control options in canola.
Yeah, so that's partly why I'm doing it. I've got some kochia issues. Actually, every farmer has some kochia issues. It popped up badly this year, and I want to get another group of chemical in there. So I might try Liberty or I don't even know the name. There's a different name for that canola, I think, now.
Yeah.
But I might try and seed some of those acres this next year.
Okay. Great. Is there anything else you want to?
Well, so I'll just touch briefly on
yeah,
French green lentils. I mean, this is a niche crop. Demand can be 15 to 20,000 tons into France. Most of those buyers have not been buying much at all, and it's been super slow. We had no new crop pricing at all. My hope is that guys, I did grow some myself, but I cut my acreage in half as to what I could have grown, because I grew 2,700 acres, but I only grew 1,100 of French, of lentils. And I think we're going to really struggle to get movement on that this year. And that crop, I mean, a couple of years ago, I bought organic French green lentils and shipped them as conventional. I mean, prices were through the roof. And, now the buyers, they've got some of their 2025, they're still taking. 2024 crop is still being shipped. And the 2025 crop, they haven't bought much.
Oh, well.
So I think that market's going to be very, very slow. And it's not a price thing, it's just a lack of shipment, lack of sales. So
Small market.
super small markets. So The one other interesting thing that I'll mention is we Harvest Grain acquired a variety of Spanish brown lentils
Oh yeah.
called CDC 7030, I'm pretty sure. So we acquired that breeder seed. We're multiplying that on irrigation this year, and we should have a fair bit of seed available for this next spring for 26 production. The Pardina market, again, if you look at the French green market, it's niche. The Pardina market is somewhere between Beluga lentil niche and French green niche. It's somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
So it's, it's a small market. And Spain grows their own Pardinas. It's their own Spanish brown. Pardina is a U.S. term. And the U.S. does have Pardina or Spanish brown production.
Yeah.
And so we'll have this variety available in the spring, and we'll be doing contracting. But there's a bit of an issue with it in that some years Spain buys a lot, some years Spain buys none, depending on how their own crop performs.
Okay, so it might be one of those crops you hang on to.
Yeah. But when they're high value, they're super high value too.
Yeah.
So we're excited about that. We're looking for different niche varieties that we can acquire, and we're developing a seed program, and so we're trying to kind of reinvent the wheel a little bit in how we manage things, and try and get some good growers and some good buyers for these specific crops. I've got some ideas in the pea market as well for that, and so
interesting.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing how fall progresses. Is always an exciting time.
Yeah.
In this industry, and phones starting to light up today felt like like people are really starting to get some stuff in the bin, and everyone's looking for movement. So
And there's good yields out there so far.
yeah, so far, yeah.
Well, interesting.
Good.
Well, this has been fun, and I guess in a couple of weeks we'll come out with a canary seed one and
Sounds good.
go from there. All right.
Okay, thank you.